Welcome to the Pastel Podcast, where we chat with pastel artists and take a dive into the vibrant world of pastel painting. Whether you're an experienced artist or just beginning, this podcast brings you inspiring stories and engaging discussions on the joy of painting with pastels. Thanks for tuning in and get ready to add more color into your world. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Pastel Podcast, brought to you by Streamline Publishing, the publishers of the Pastel Today e-newsletter and Planner magazine. We have one of the best pastel planner painters in the country on this podcast today, and we also share a crazy family story, so make sure you stay tuned for that. I'm Kari Stober. I am the pastel artist, and I've also been with Streamline Publishing for 13 years, and most currently am the Pastel Today Community Ambassador.
I'm Lisa Skelly. I'm your co-host for the Pastel Podcast. I've been working in pastel for more than 20 years and also teaching in pastel. I own the Hughes Skelly Gallery on beautiful Balboa Island in Newport Beach, California, where we get to represent some of the best artists working in plein air today, including our guest today. One of my favorite awards that I've ever won is from the plein air salon at the plein air convention in 2023, and I won the best pastel of the year. Such an honor, and one of my favorite awards.
I remember that. That was actually the first time that you and I met in person, which was fun. Mm-hmm. And then last year, Kim actually won that award, and you got to accept it on her behalf since she couldn't be there.
I did. Quite an honor.
We started this podcast because we are both passionate about pastels, and we want to spread the word about the pastel painting medium and inspire artists. So with that, let's bring in our very first Pastel Podcast guest.
Yay.
Hi, Kim.
Good morning. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Great.
Good. What an honor to be here, you guys. Thank you so much. And for the first podcast.
You had to be the first because there's a special reason behind that. Because you are the first artist that I met when I started working for Streamline Publishing. At that time, my boss was Charlie Bogus, and she took me to my first show, which was the Core show down in Denver. And you were the first artist that I got to meet. So I thought it only fitting that you be the first artist on this podcast.
Thank you.
I have a similar story about Kim being the first pastelist I started following when I got into the pastel medium, and she was my favorite by far and inspirational. So I started following her years and years ago, more than 20 years ago. When I started in the medium, I said, I want to do that too. So
how did you guys first meet?
Oh, good story. We met on the phone. So I don't know if you want Kim. Do you want Kim to share her side of the story? Or
you share the story.
I'll share a little bit, and then you can share too, like your version of it. So I was reading the Pastel Journal, and Kim just happened to be on the cover, and I thought, oh, it was a beautiful painting, and it was a beautiful article. And it turns out we were both flight attendants. So at one point, Kim was a flight attendant. I was reading this article while I was sitting on my jump seat working for American Airlines. And I said, oh my gosh, she was a flight attendant too. I think I could do this. And it was very inspirational. So I ended up calling her and saying, oh, there's a phone number, there's a studio, information about her studio. So I called. She actually answered the phone. I was like, I wasn't expecting that. And so I said, oh, I wasn't expecting you to answer the phone, but I just wanted to congratulate you on the cover. You're an inspiration for me. I'm just starting out in pastels, and I love your work. And she was going to an event, and she said, would you like to go with me? We were both in Northern California. And I said, huh? I was like, well, you don't even know me. That's really amazing that you're asking me to join you at this event, which wasn't very far from where I was. It was up in Sonoma County for Sonoma Plein Air. And I was like, yeah, I'll be there. So I went and I met her in person, and she's just as lovely. And it was really fun. Yeah.
That's such a cool story.
When there's like that kind of kismet at the beginning, you have that conversation, and you have a lot in common, and both passionate about similar things. So obviously it's super easy to become friends with Miss Lisa Skelly. And
I agree with that. You are so giving of your time. So it makes complete sense that you would invite her after talking to her on the phone. But that's just how you are. You are so giving of your time. You are so friendly and so easy to talk to. And same with Lisa. You both are just, it's so nice to have you in my life because you are both very encouraging people. Especially when I tend to talk negatively about myself, you make me stop and correct me. But no, I think you guys, you are both just such lovely, lovely people.
Well, thank you, Kari. That's very
Thank you
sweet.
very much.
I'm a
Yeah,
big
thank
fan
you.
of Kim Lordier, and I've been so for a very long time. So let's get into it. Let's get into it with Kim.
You
Let's
guys,
find out.
the check's in the mail, guys. Okay.
Thank you. The first thing that I wanted to talk about was, so you and I first met at the course show. And at that time, I don't know if you still have it on your business cards, but you had your maiden name on your business card.
Yeah,
And it
not any
was,
longer, but yeah.
yeah, it's Fancher. And that's such a unique name, but it's my grandmother's maiden name. And I was like, that's so interesting. I don't know anyone outside of my family with this name. And so you immediately said, yeah. And then you started talking about your family history with the Mountain Meadows Massacre. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's also my family's history. So we found out that we were actually, and my dad would have known, he was a genealogist and he had it down to like your 15th cousins or something. But our family, the Fancher family, was part of a wagon train heading to California, and they stopped in Utah, and there was a bunch of political war stuff going on at that time. And they ended up being massacred by, at that time, they said it was Mormons dressed as Indians. Now they say it was Mormons and Indians. Who knows what it was? But they murdered everybody except the 17 littlest children, who eventually, a couple of years later, went back to their families. But Kim and I descended from a set of siblings that survived that massacre. So how crazy is that?
That's crazy. And that we would find that out so many years later,
I know, it's
Yeah.
insane. But yeah, so that's the story that I love. That's my connection to Kim.
Now you're both painting in pastel.
I know,
Yeah.
because Kim's paintings are so inspiring. They're so beautiful. The way that you capture light, like the painting behind you, Baby It's Cold with the horse. I love the way that you captured that morning light. And I actually have your magazine cover here for plein air microphone of kind of like diamonds in the sky. I love that one. You capture light in such a beautiful, beautiful way that I just admire it so much.
I feel like your paintings are very soulful, Kim. Like
Thank you.
Like to find out more about that. Like, what is it? How do you get that soulful feel to your paintings? So,
well, if I had a formula for it, then I probably wouldn't have stacks and piles in my studio of paintings. I don't know. I think that's what we all do. We all pour ourselves into our work. I think that's what makes it an individual journey. And I know I have elements that I bring into my paintings, the foundations, simplifying values and shapes and that kind of thing. So it's just about how we all combine all those elements of the foundations and how that all comes together for each one of us.
Is your process the same every time, Kim? Every time you approach a painting, is it going to be?
Sometimes I create an underpainting and let that set up and dry, and then apply painting or apply pastel back on top of that. And then sometimes I just work directly. More times when I'm in the field, I work directly from without an underpainting, and in the studio, particularly when I'm working larger, I do an underpainting that fills up the. I don't have to use as much pigment. Yeah, yeah.
So we talked about that. Oh, sorry. No, you go ahead. You finish.
Oh, I was just going to say, you brought up the Baby It's Cold painting, and that's something that came together. I was working along with a Fibonacci spiral to create the composition for that. And that's not something I normally do. And but there was something missing, and it sat in my studio for a month or so before I walked in, and I just knew it was off in the back corner, and I knew that kind of puff of breath right at that point in time. I needed to add that, and it just brought all the elements that painting together and brought it to life.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's not being in a hurry, to finish something. Sometimes it's about, waiting and letting the painting talk to you.
I definitely struggle with that. I'm not very good at waiting.
I was wondering if that was one of the things that you do, is let the painting tell you what it needs, like in your
Particularly
process.
larger. Yeah, particularly the larger works. The plein air, the on the spotters, those are kind of down and dirty, and I very rarely bring them to a completion. They sit around in my studio for for inspirational purposes and studies for the larger works. And for sometimes
So you
I'll
are
definitely.
known for being one of the best pastel plein air painters. Is that, I mean, did you start out with pastel in the field, or did you start out, I mean, because you have a degree in illustration. So how did you get from illustration to pastel? How was that journey?
I'll make that really short. Am I allowed to say a bad word?
Preferably not, but
I kind of SU when I was in school, and when I was studying illustration, I was very intimidated by the competition, and I was very young and did not probably take full advantage of that time. But in high school, I started painting animal portraits in pastel, and so I've been painting in pastel since I was 15. So it's very much, I know that medium like the back of my hand. And but fast forward to the plein air work, that really, I started that in oil, and studied with a local teacher here. And then I quickly adapted the underpainting process that she shared with us with her oil painting into my pastels. And then I just started back into painting pastel. And that's how I really got my, I guess my career start was through the pastel scene. I mean, excuse me, through the plein air scene.
yeah.
And that's, yeah.
So what was her approach to underpaintings for oil paintings?
Well, she would create a thin underpainting with the oil, and then quickly, add thicker, juicier marks on top. And I was doing that with her for a little bit, and then she and I went out on location by ourselves without a class environment, and I decided to paint in pastel that way. And it was kind of cool because I created this underpainting, and I'll just share this quick note with you. She was set up, I don't know, a couple yards behind me, and I was painting one of my favorite locations. Is this beautiful eucalyptus grove near me, and I just started the underpainting with it was a monochromatic underpainting, and I was just starting to apply color on top. And she comes running up behind me. She goes, Kim, stop! You must stop! You must put that away!" And I'm like, "What? There's no color." She goes, "No, that's a beautiful painting just as it is." She goes, "This is way farther ahead in your career," is what she said. And I kind of didn't understand what she was saying, but I went ahead and put it away and then painted another piece from that same scene. And to this day, that little beginning hangs on my parents' wall, and it's got a powerful simplified tonal shape and structure to it that even to this day I'm like, wow, I didn't know I could do that. And especially, this was back in 2000. um, it was really cool how somebody who's guiding you can see your future, or can see where you can go. And I'm very grateful to Brigitte for that moment of our time together.
And you do the same thing. So when you were here in Colorado, what was that, September of last year? No, it was July of last year during the Pure Color show. You invited me to go plein air painting with you, and I did. And I have not gone pastel plein air painting since I started pastel. I mean, it was a long, long, long time ago. And it was a terrible experience because I was not equipped for it. So this time I was actually equipped for it. And painting alongside you was so fun because you did a similar thing to me where you're like, oh, that looks good. And so I was like, oh, okay. So I just kind of left that one because I would have totally overworked it. And I just kind of
Yes,
left that
you
one.
do.
And that's one of my husband's favorite paintings is the one that I just kind of left, and it was messy and it was great. And you are I wish that I could be inside your mind when you were painting because I was standing
Me
next to
too.
you and I could not see the same things that you were seeing. I think I lack that vision right now
No,
because you were like putting strokes on, and I was like, what is that? Where is that? What is she seeing that I am not seeing? And you just have this way of seeing the world that is completely different than me. And it's so cool to watch as you're
but
just
that's
putting that stuff
that's the
down.
that's the beauty. That's for all three of us and everybody else out there who stands in front of an easel. You're putting your magic and your passion and your love of what you're viewing into your scene. And that's what I just got finished teaching a 4-day workshop. And I do my workshops way different than anybody else. I create these files and do a deep dive into the individual's artist's work and share with them things that I might be seeing that maybe they're repeating something where they're losing miles with their values in space, or I see something beautiful that happens in their work. Like I just had a gal who has these most incredible patterns and colors um, that she was kind of fighting between trying to create realism and then also flattening planes and doing patterns. And I just saw a gorgeous road for her to go down, and I suggested she embrace that in her work. And then that's happened several times now with folks that have like kind of taken a little bit of a shift in their approach and grabbed onto who they are versus trying to tell somebody how to paint like me or
Mhm.
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, and so we're all I'm not sharing anything new. When I teach, everybody teaches the foundations, the main principles of painting. It's just how we all put it all together.
I think the difference between each person and their vision and their voice as an artist is also translated to your voice as a teacher and how you can express and bring out the best in your students. And I loved taking your workshop and I felt like I was really diving into some new things for myself. And I wasn't, and I was on the side of like I was just hosting the workshop, so I got to see how you interacted with each one of your students and how you brought out the best in them, and also gain a lot of information that I could take away and put in my toolbox and use and guide me into being like and really taking that voice of my own voice and putting that into my paintings even more. It's just like validating. It's validating who you are as an artist. And so I really loved your workshop and appreciated your method of teaching because they're both beautiful, the paintings and the teacher. So, and the
Thank you.
methods that you
Thank you.
employ.
Thank you.
Implore.
Thank you.
The Baby It's Cold Outside reminds me of how you have a special connection with horses in particular.
Mm.
And I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that special connection you have with horses.
It started in the womb, my mom's. I kid you not, really quick. My grandfather raised and trained running quarter horses in the Pacific Northwest. And then we would go up as my mom would go up and she rode the first horse that my grandfather gave to me when I was 9 years old. And her name was Angel. My mom's Shireen. Angel was the horse. But she rode Angel while she was pregnant with me. And I came out of the womb pretty much, that typical, horse loving little girl that they couldn't
Oh.
get me off the merry-go-round at Disneyland, and I was kidded as a kid, because I would paw and neigh, when I was really little. So it just, it's inbred in me.
Yep. That's really
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah. When we were on a pack trip, Carrie, the one that Bill Cohen and Paul Cratter do, the High Sierra trip, and Kim, she said, I'm in my happy place, and she was on a horse, and so I was like, yeah, it's just like she just could stay on that horse all day, I think. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you're hiking up, those trails, and when you're physically hiking, you're having to look down where you're putting your feet for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're on horseback, especially on one of those great, stock horses that the pack stations have, man, I'm just like snapping away, looking around and enjoying the beauty
Yeah, because they know
versus,
what they're doing.
look where my feet are. Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
that's, yeah.
That
Yeah.
was a
Yeah. I got
magical
to
trip.
combine my three loves, painting, writing, and Mother Nature. So it doesn't get any better than that for me.
That's awesome. So when you are out in the field like that, where does your inspiration come from? Like, you're taking pictures and you're just like, oh, that one thing right there just spoke to me? Or like, how do you approach a blank canvas when you need that inspiration?
When I'm out on location, I'm always I'm looking to information gather. So I have a tendency to paint more intimate scenes versus the big grand picture or the overall scene. I find getting those true color notes, that quality of light that's happening at that moment in time. And I don't feel compelled to finish a painting when I'm on location. So usually it can be nothing more than a color combination that I'm seeing in the rocks, or how the sunlight is creating this beautiful rim light on the edge of whatever it is. And Mother Nature is really the natural environment is really what I'm drawn to, not so much the man-made things. Um, so And then in the studio, again, it can be just nothing more than a color combination, or trying to get out of my, comfort zone and trying something new. Um,
Is it a feeling that you get, like when you look at something and say, that speaks to you? Like or do you just
so
kind of explore lots of things?
this is something that I talk about in my workshops, because you know how, let's say you're in your studio and you're flipping through your plein air studies, um, or your photographs. Yes, I work from photographs. I know that's a crime for a lot of people.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Um, but I will, how you just go through the 10,000 photos on one day, and all of a sudden
Mhm.
one pops out like, oh, this looks good.
Mhm.
I always have to ask myself, and I encourage the folks that pull that particular photo out is, okay, you're looking at that photo or that plein air study, and there's got to be a reason why that has, for the last 2 hours, you've been flipping through stuff. There's something that's speaking to you at that moment in time, instead of just doing a copy of the photograph or your plein air study. You ask yourself why. What is it about this this scene at this moment in time? What is it about there? Is it something that's within there, or is it it's the why. Ask that why, and then really hone in on that concept, because one photo, one plein air study can really be multiple paintings if you're willing
Mhm.
to work out the composition, or change the concept or idea behind it.
Mhm.
So it will be nothing. It's the same way as going out on location and finding something beautiful to tackle. And it's, for me, it's always a problem. It's not like, maybe I may be painting for shows, but I go in my head and I say, well, I'm gonna paint until I get something for this show. And so maybe I do two or three paintings for a show, and one of them is maybe worthy for that entering in a show, versus saying, oh, this canvas is going to be for the show. And
Mhm.
you kind of play a mind game. I try and do that when I go to sleep too.
So you paint
I'll
for
sleep
so you
tomorrow
do
night.
you do workshops, you do demos, shows, you've done the plein air convention multiple times. What are the most important things that you try to impress on your students?
First, trust your gut. So, when that, I think that's
What
the
if you
most
don't know? What
important.
if your gut doesn't know? What if
Then
your gut is
for
incompetent?
Oh, that's a whole different story. Or, yeah. If you, yes, learn the foundations, obviously. I feel very strongly that value does all the work and color gets all the glory. So, if I can teach nothing more than somebody to learn atmospheric perspective when we're trying to create something representational and they're kind of not quite fully immersed in all the foundations. I think that is really important, and teaching the power of simplifying shapes and values. And that's what I teach, um, or what my workshops are mostly about, or what I encourage people who are just starting out to really get a firm grasp on understanding what values do. And
Yeah, that's definitely one of the trickier things for me.
So
yeah,
important.
I think so.
So how do you approach the atmospheric perspective then? Because that's something that definitely is, I mean, a lot of landscape paintings can be very flat if you don't have that. So how do you capture that with pastel?
Well, it's the same as in any medium, whether you're painting watercolor, acrylic, oil, pastel, gouache. It's still having that, um, in general, everything, all the rules are general, but having kind of your warms in the foreground, and then we cool off as you go back in space. And then also, I think the thing that people forget the most is that. Um, the values get compressed, the lights and the darks get compressed as you go back in space. So, um, making sure, I think that's a little bit more advanced theory about going back, atmospheric perspective. We all know that it gets lighter and cooler as you travel back in space. We lose the yellows and the reds, and then the greens, and then it goes to blues and purples, or uh, as you go back. But also the amount of contrast between the dark value and the light value, or what's in light and what's in shade, those contrasts gets closer and closer together as you travel back
Mhm.
in space. So that's really, I think that's really key to reinforcing in folks that are learning.
Oh, that's really
And
good.
have it reading correctly so that
Yep.
you're like, oh yeah, that's way in the distance back there.
When um, when we're out there painting and we look in the distance and we start really isolating our my hand, sorry. When we start isolating where we're looking, all of a sudden our eyes, open up, and we're back in the distance and we see more contrast because we're not comparing that to what's in the foreground. And if you can, I encourage everybody to step back from their painting as much as possible, to really get the overall feel of what's happening there. And then in the interim, also take a small screenshot of it with your camera, your phone, and turn it black and white, and you can really see what the values are doing.
So here's a question for you. With pastel, so obviously with, the mixable mediums, you can mix any color you want. With pastel, that's a little more difficult. That's why we have, 8 million sticks in our
Yes.
studios. So
Yes.
when you're doing a painting and you don't have the right color or the right value, what do?
Uh, so
You stop and go to the store
no,
and buy the one you need?
no, 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 no. I just, first of all, each medium has its pros and cons to it, or I don't know if they're cons, but they have their idiosyncrasies, let's say.
Mhm.
And with pastel, we have the option of glazing, so we can always modify a color by, we can glaze, we can use a pure cadmium red stick and glaze a soft coating of the same value of a neutral green to neutralize that red. So you knock the intensity of the color down. Um, So we have that at our fingertips to always be modifying what we have. I find that the biggest problem is that we have such large jumps in value that that sometimes we can't incrementally mix a slightly lighter value and slightly lighter value. But if you are simplifying your values within your painting and have a more simplified value structure, um, then you can play with color. We have, I think it's easier for us to actually play with color. Um,
Mhm.
no, well, not easier. It's um, pastel lends itself to playing with color in a lot of ways because um, we just have those sticks, and when you open up your box and you see all those beautiful colors, it's like hard to stay out of them. I don't know if I really answered that question because each medium has its idiosyncrasies,
Yeah. So I'm,
so we just make
just
it work.
using, if you don't have the right color, you just find something that's at least in the right value.
And
Absolutely,
It'll
right
still work
balance.
layering
for the
it.
painting. Yeah.
And then
Layering it or
layering it.
glazing it. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
One of the things that I really share with my students is how light I'm actually applying the pastels and making marks to get the translucency and to layer and to get the color. Are you
yeah.
doing the same thing? Because I don't think people realize when they're just starting out in pastels, a lot of times very heavy handed, and then
Oh,
they
I'm
fill up the tube.
100% heavy-handed.
And so I think
Yeah,
that
yeah.
really taking your time and I'll do transparent layers and practice with that. And then I don't know if that's similar, but I love watching you paint when you're doing a demo too. It's almost like a dance with your pastels. And you even do some motion with your hands that are very dancer-like, almost like ballet with your pastels on your surface. And it's really fun to watch. And I don't know if you're trying to get the motion before you actually apply the pastel, but your mark making is beautiful. And you wouldn't know that unless you watched you paint, like unless watching you paint, like how you approach and stepping back. I always forget. And that's part of the dance too, stepping back and going
Yeah.
forward and
Yeah.
then making that motion before you even touch your support. So tell us a little bit about the dance of
A dance.
pastels. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's how I approach it. Very similar to you, Lisa, where um, the first strokes and stuff, I'm finding my palette and gathering the colors that I will eventually hit harder or with a stronger, more bold mark. But that comes later in my painting process.
Mhm.
So where I will, the dancing of it when I'm painting, I'm not painting, okay, I'm going to paint a tree, and then here's the branch, and here's the leaf, and here's the root structure, and all that. I paint the gesture of the shape, and and my marks making reflect the gestures of say the grasses, as opposed to thinking of grasses as a linear line. Our pastel sticks are much like loading up a big uh, juicy brush with a few different colors and oil and just making that beautiful um, gestural mark because it is pigment that we're playing with as opposed to uh, the actual grasses.
Mhm.
So and then the dance, it's just the gesture, it's the movement of the shape that I'm seeing and how it's growing. It's kinda corny, but I've just been realizing that I feel like when I'm painting that I feel like I'm the tree growing. This is so corny, oh my god. This is just a I feel it. I feel it internally, and I wasn't really aware of that until probably a year or so ago that I put myself I combine a whole bunch of different reference materials to create a painting. And a lot of times, maybe the lighting isn't the same in some of particularly with the paintings of horses. I'll take some horses from different lighting conditions, but it's just that their gesture works for the idea that I have in a painting. but the lighting is wrong. And so a lot of times, I'll get the drawing in of the gesture, but then I completely make up the light on the animals to reflect what's happening in the scene. And so often I will feel, I'll start neighing. No, I'm just kidding. Um, but I'll feel the light, where that light source is coming from, and I feel where it's going to be hitting the animal in whatever plane they are in. Um, so I forgot what the question was.
Oh, it's just about the gesture.
The
But that's
gesture, yeah.
really, that's
The
so
dance.
fascinating that you take, like you sort of imagine growing as the object is growing in front of you, like that you're mimicking the gesture of the object that you're painting with your
Yeah,
strokes
yeah,
and with the
yeah.
dance of, applying those pastels, but also imagining it. It must be really cool. Like it must be really cool to say this tree is growing like you're imagining. You're almost becoming you're becoming one with the tree, almost like, or
It's
becoming one with
it's
nature. You're like
it,
you're feeling it. Like it's more than
yes,
just I'm going to paint this object in front of me, or I'm going to try to represent this object in front of me. But it maybe that's why your paintings are so soulful, because you are capturing the soul of what you're painting and you're imagining it and then putting it onto your support with, the dance of your pastels. And but I think that's really cool. That's really fun to share. You're vulnerable there with sharing
yeah,
the secret
yeah,
into, oh, we're getting
yeah,
into her mind, Kari. We're like
yes.
getting in there, like we're finding out what's going on in Kim's
That's
mind.
not a good place.
I don't know, it's kind of fun. It's kind of fun to
Right?
see. Yeah.
So Kim, you've painted in oil. Do you paint in any other mediums?
Gouache, but not as much as the I paint in gouache. I painted in a watercolor a long, long time ago, and that just hasn't found its way back into my repertoire. But
That one
I'm
is
really
so
trying.
hard.
Oh, what watercolor?
Yeah, because there's not I couldn't I love color, so I couldn't ever get the color that I wanted out of watercolor. And then it's also the opposite. You work light to dark instead of dark to light. So
I
I
think I
definitely
think
prefer
I
pastel.
think yeah, I prefer pastel too. I love pastel and oil probably equally. And watercolor, I think if you're really wanting that juicy color, definitely don't do the pads, or what do they call them? Squeeze it out fresh so that you can dig
Go tubes,
into a
yeah.
little bit richer. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So have you
Um,
tried watercolor or gouache underpaintings for pastel?
no, but no. However, I just was had a painting accepted into a show through the Pastel Society of the West Coast. It's called Out of Bounds, and it's normally the pastel exhibitions require that 80% of the final surface of your painting is uh, pastel, and then you can use a watercolor or gouache or um, some kind of underpainting, but 80% of the painting must be covered in the pastel. And this particular show is more experimental and creating works with mixed media, and a much less percentage of pastel can be visible on the surface. And so my painting was all oil paint underpainting. Some areas where it's tea stained consistency, some areas where it is a little bit thicker, and then I brought in, paper towels and to create all these textures, and then I let that set up to dry for a few days, and then just put some beautiful pastel strokes over top of it, and I was really lucky to get a painting in the show.
That's cool.
Wow.
Do
I
you
saw that. I saw that show and I was really curious about it. And like using more than just pastel in the painting in the process, and I'm really excited to see that painting and see how
It
you did
was
oil with pastel, because I
yeah,
just
do you
thought that
have
would
the
be really
gesso over
hard.
that?
I'm
I
not
thought that'd
allowed
be
to
good.
show it yet. I think the show opens next week. But
Mhm.
one thing I want to just share is that I drove down to Morro Bay, which is where the show is going to be in
Mhm.
California, and I helped receive all the paintings. So I've got a sneak peek of all the paintings from the show. And some people
Nice.
have created crochet and stitching and
Wow.
fabrics and
Oh, interesting.
there's all kinds of different approaches that people use. Some people are using spray paint with sparkle and then painting on top of that. Uh, it's
That's
a
exciting.
really interesting show, and there's a lot more folks working more expression um, expressively, not as literal or representationally. So there's a big variety. So it's really kind of cool to see the pastel world start to step out and embrace other ways of working with this medium because it's extremely versatile.
Oh,
Mhm.
it totally is. So when you paint over oil painting, do you have to gesso over the oil paint or can you just go right on top?
I just went directly on top. But I did have to put glass, museum glass over top of it. And you have to use a spacer so that there's
Yeah.
no, moisture buildup. And so that the oil paint is allowed to cure, over time. It's not that thick, but you still need to be careful with that.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering, actually, like how did you frame that? And so you just answered the question. That's really
Yeah.
cool. Can't wait to see it.
Good. I can't wait to show it.
And one thing I've heard you say before that I want you to talk about is drive-by plein painting. What is that?
Drive by. So it speaks to our own personal voice, drive-by painting, I call it. And it's I talk about it when I'm teaching a workshop, and it's when people go, well, I don't have a style. I don't have, how do I find my style? And I liken it to drive-by painting. So when you're driving down the highway, for me, it's 80, 85 miles an hour. And out of the corner of my eye, I'm like, oh, there goes my painting. And I'm
Yeah.
driving. Oh,
Mm.
I love it. And then I'll drive by and I go, oh, there's Lisa Skelly's painting.
Oh, I do
Ooh,
that.
there's Deborah Hughes. Deborah Hughes would paint that.
Mhm.
And you're driving
Mhm.
by and these shapes, the lights and darks, all this coalesces in one moment in a time and then it breaks apart. And
Mhm.
becoming in tune with what's happening is being really self-aware of what speaks to you aesthetically.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I didn't
And
Yeah.
realize there was a
yeah,
term for it. I do that all the time driving down the highway. It's so because
yeah.
I'm in
Well, I
northern
I coined
Colorado,
it.
and
You
well, there you
did.
go.
I
We
never
need
called it
we need
drive
bumper stickers
by.
now.
Yeah.
No, it's so cool because I'm always trying to take photos as I'm driving down the highway because I just the way that the sunset is over the mountains, or then you've got the plains to the east, and just the color that goes with the sunset over here versus the mountains. It's so
Yeah.
different and it's
Yes.
so beautiful. And I've not yet been able to, I will say yet, I've not been able to capture it yet, but I definitely have tried to take a lot of photos driving down the highway.
I
And
always wonder if I
it's
could.
not just go ahead.
Oh, I always wonder when I'm doing that and when I see a painting on the side or I see somebody else's painting on the side that I know, like, oh, that's a, Kim Lordier painting. I always think, I wish I could stand in the middle of this road because this is
Right?
where
Yeah.
the view is and where this beautiful vista that I'm looking at. I'm like, darn it, I wish I could, like, where could I stand on the sides of the
We
road
need
to get that actual,
we need an elevated artist lane.
Yes.
like a
Yeah,
bike
We
lane
need
yeah,
to
right
we
down
need
the
to
yeah,
bring,
middle.
yeah,
those vests that the workers wear, the
there you
fluorescent
go.
vest, to just jump out
Yeah,
of the car and start painting in the middle of the highway.
yeah, yeah, that's
Kim,
Extreme
you
good.
were
plein
going to
air
say something
painting.
about photos. It's not just about taking photos. Is that what you were going to say?
Yeah, it's not so I too am snap happy as I'm driving, and never do they ever come out with anything
No,
really.
never.
Mhm.
Um, and they're probably filling up my hard drive. Anyway, but the drive-by thing is like you see it all come together and go, and that's where you go, I got to turn around and go back and compose,
Mhm.
right? It's seeing somebody else, oh, they would paint that. And it's that moment in time where all those elements, like I mentioned, come together. So it's
Mhm.
not driving and constantly shooting as we go. That information is coming in, uh, into our heads. But it's really understanding that when all those elements come together, that's your truth, your truth coming out, and the things that speak to you aesthetically as light and shadow, as shapes, as design, all that, and becoming aware of that is really key, I think.
Yeah.
It takes
Mhm.
time, and it takes the willingness to get off the road and go find a frontage road to go see if you
Yeah.
can't refine that scene. I've done that many, many times on my big road trips.
I think for me, I would love to do that. It's hard because I'm always where I'm at.
Yes.
I'm a highway exit. So I'm either on the highway
Yeah.
or
No, I hear you.
I can't get off. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
and the light changes so fast by the time I turned
Yeah.
around and actually got down
Yep.
there and be gone. But
Yep.
I do like that approach though. I think because since I've started painting, I definitely see the world a lot differently than I did before. And you were actually
Absolutely.
one of the first ones to show me that. It wasn't the painting that was on the cover of Plein Air, but there was another snow scene that you painted. It might have actually been the one at the course. I can't remember. But you talked about how, like, painting snow is not white. Snow is so many different colors. And so that is what triggered in me looking at different things. I'm like, okay, I love that cloud, but that cloud isn't white. What color is that cloud? So then I started looking at shadows and, okay, what color is this? What color would I paint that? And so that definitely is something that has helped improve me as an artist is seeing the world in the different colors. Now, saying that, I still have a hard time with people like Tom Christopher. I love his paintings. He'll put like a turquoise or a purple in something. And I'm like, how do you see that color in there? Because I paint what I
Okay.
see. I'm still working on how to paint what I want to see.
So two completely different things. Remind me of Tom Christopher and the turquoise in a second.
Okay.
But I just incorporated a fabulous exercise in my workshops, and I learned it from Carol Strock Wasson, who was a
He's a great
guest
artist.
blog. She wrote a guest blog post for the Pastel Society of the West Coast. So if you go to their website, you can see this exercise that she shared with everybody. I completely stole it, but she created these
But you're giving
cardboard
attribution, so you're good.
What's that?
I said you're giving her attribution, so you're good.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I did in the class that I was teaching too. But she built a box. You build a cardboard box, and you line it with different colors of construction paper, and you set a roll of toilet paper on there. And then put a little plastic cup under there so that, and then you shine a light in there, and so the toilet paper is receiving all this bounced color and reflected light, reflected color, and then because snow and clouds and waves, um, the foam part of waves, they all receive light. They are painted white so often, but they really,
Mhm.
when I'm not going to get into the physics of it, but for teaching artists to see, setting up this exercise is great because the toilet paper is absorbent, and then the little plastic glass, um, with the light shining on, has the lightest light in that entire scene is not the white of the toilet paper. It's the reflection of the light bouncing on the plastic cup. So
Hmm.
there's a it's a great reminder to not paint the toilet paper white. You don't even use white, because in our toolbox, the white, titanium white or white, is the lightest value we have available to us. So you have to reserve that light for the highlight on the cup. When you're out on painting the ocean and you have these beautiful rolling waves coming in, um, if for some reason a wave is angled such that it's coming in and then the water's rolling over here and the sunlight's coming in from this angle, the highlight, that's the sparkle on the wave part, is going to be brighter than any of the foam of the crashing wave. So
Mhm.
Interesting.
it's reserving that lightest light. So when you're painting snow, you know, I wouldn't even put white in there until the very, very end, where if there's a change of plane and the light source is coming from this area and you have like a footstep and the light's coming from this direction, the whitest white is going to be just on the edge before it starts to turn the form. And if you reserve that lightest light for that area, I can lead your eye bound through my painting, much like a footstep, to tell you where I want you to go. So holding off on adding those lightest lights till the very end is really key and really important.
I'm using white less and less, and sometimes not at all in my paintings. And I figure that that's just the evolution of practice, 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 and
Yes,
that
yeah,
saving
and really,
those.
yeah, and really studying, the historical artists. When you look at a Sorolla painting, you know, where's the white, right? And then
Yeah.
really comparing, one of his figures and the light, one of the light on the dress compared to the water behind, when he's painting one of the figures on the beaches. You look at the value of the highlight on the skin of one of the kids that are playing in the surf, and it's the whitest white is reserved for that highlight on the wet skin. So,
Mm.
um, and in my workshops, I sometimes have taken white out of somebody's box because they go start to
Use it
paint
too
with
much.
white. Yeah, yeah. So, and I've challenged people. I'll say, hey, do this one painting without using white. Just to
Mm.
illustrate a point.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's very
And they're
good.
always really cool about it. So,
Yeah. Well, that's good.
yeah,
They don't get
yeah.
mad that you've taken away
Good
their crayon.
challenge.
No.
That's my favorite color or non-color.
Yeah.
So, what were you going to say about Tom Christopher and turquoise?
Yeah.
Oh, so you know, we also have our own internal um I guess I can speak for myself, but a lot of us have our own internal um color palettes that are natural to us. And
Teal, anyone?
what's that?
I said teal, anyone?
Teal, there you go. There you
Harry
go.
likes teal.
Yeah, I'm a autumn. I mean, I'm always drawn to rich autumn colors, and Lisa's blue, it's teal a lot.
Right there.
Yeah.
Blue wave up
um,
there.
but
Mhm.
even in our painting, I bet you if you were to set out 20 of your paintings that you've done in the last, 6 months, you'll see a consistent theme of your color usage, where how you lean as an individual, and tapping into that is really key. When you pull out, I have files on my computer of inspirational paintings and artists. And
Mhm.
then I'll have a color file, I'll have a composition file, design, concept, whatever that looks like, different files. And sometimes a painting, ends up in multiple files. But when I open up the color folder, there's a real strong consistency of things that I'm personally drawn to.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I said, with that said, um, introducing those fun colors within your painting is a fabulous thing, because that starts to tell the viewer that's a Kari Stober painting, that's a Lisa
Yeah.
Skelly painting, that's a Kim Lordier painting, that's a Tom Christopher painting. Is For a while I was adding in every single painting this brilliant orange, and I dotted all over the painting because I likened it as, this is me leading the viewer through my path or through my painting. And for whatever reason, it just ended up, I was doing that for a lot of my work, and it wasn't big chunks of it. It was just a subtle little a tickle of
Yeah.
color. Yeah. So Find your tickle, Kari.
It's teal. Teals and greens are just, I don't know what it is. And that's, you look at my palette on my table and I have so many greens and blue greens, and go to Terry Ludwig, and that's always the tray that I want to go to, is get all of the teal and the turquoise ones.
So let me share this. Try creating a landscape. Take your photo and turn into black and white, and just paint a harmonious blue-green painting out of it.
Ooh, I like
Take your
that.
favorite colors and work out the values.
I like that. I'm gonna have to try it.
Yeah, just for and giggles.
Well, I got the Alan Picard Terry Ludwig set
Yeah.
because his colors are so vibrant. And I'm like, that's what I want my landscapes to look like. So there's so many pinks and yellows and oranges and blues and stuff that you wouldn't normally think are in a landscape. And yeah, I've got to get that out and play with it again. But I like
Yeah,
the
and
idea of the harmonious landscape in black and white.
So that's the key. You said play. And
Yeah.
I think, as you're learning the fundamentals and getting stronger with your mark making and all those things that all of us are constantly working on, you know, make sure you have time to play. And one of my favorite, I'm a lurker there, but Larry Moore has this What If University on Facebook, and he's got a great book called Fishing for Elephants, that he sets out a lot of fun exercises and playtime and things to ponder while you're painting. And I don't think we give ourselves, I shouldn't say we, I don't give myself enough time to play and experiment in the studio. You get to a point in time where the shows and the galleries and the commitments really take away, not to mention real life, take away from that opportunity to play. So
Yeah.
use that time, now as you're as you're moving forward in your work. All of us need to have more time to experiment and play and ask what if.
Yeah. I like that.
It's a recess. We each need recess every day.
Yeah.
So we're getting close to time. So I have one more question that I wanted to ask you. And I don't know, Lisa, do you have anything else you want to ask Kim?
Oh, I wonder what's coming up for, unless that's what you were going to ask him, but I know there's some fun question you have for her, but just, and we can share with that after your question, but just like, what is coming up in Kim's world? Like, what's next for Kim?
Yeah, you've got a workshop coming up, don't you?
I just, excuse me, I just finished teaching a workshop, and I have just signed a contract to teach in November through the Tucson Pastel Society, which I'm really looking forward to.
That's cool.
That'll be
And
fun.
that'll be a 3-day. Yeah. I'm in the middle of creating work for a new show called Wild Women Paint the West, and it's got this stellar lineup of fabulous women artists: Elizabeth Robbins, Shauna Kuntz, Cindy Barron, Lori McNee, Ramona Youngquist, Stephanie Marzella, and Susie Baker. And
Wow.
the show's going to open in September at the Loom Gallery in Phillipsburg, Montana.
Very
And
cool.
so, yeah, that is I'm in the middle of working for that. And then I have one other. I don't know when this will air, but I think it'll happen before this airs. So I'm going to share a big honor that's coming my way, that I'm just can't believe it's happening. But the pastel, well, I can't believe it's happening. Very honored. The Pastel Society of the West Coast has a distinction called the Pastel Laureate, and there's only 9 folks that have been awarded this honor. And coming up in the next couple weeks, both Terry Ford, a fabulous and
I
amazing
love Terry.
pastel artist, and I will be receiving the Pastel Laureate distinction through
That is so
PSWC.
cool.
That's so
Yeah, and
Congratulations.
awesome.
thank you, thank you. I just a handful of names, Albert Handel, Daniel Green, Bob Gerbrock, Margot Schultzke, who's who founded PSWC, Richard McKinley. That's some big
Wow.
shoes to be
Yeah.
next to, parking my shoes next to. So it's a
You
huge
get
honor,
to
and I'm
rub
very
shoulders with
grateful.
them. That's cool.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
I'm very grateful. Thank you.
That's amazing.
So with that, since you were talking about the greats, 100 years from now, what is something that you, Kim Lordier, want to be remembered for?
100 years from now, I'm just grateful for this time on earth that I have right now. So, you talk about legacy and all that kind of stuff. I just that I was open and friendly, I guess.
Done. It's already done.
That is
Yeah.
100%. Yeah, this is will
that
be
I'm willing
recorded for
to,
all time.
yeah, that I'm willing to listen and to be a part of your life. I just feel grateful for that opportunity. That's yeah,
Yeah,
and being a
I
good
think
mom
that's
to my son.
that's a great thing to want to be, to want to be remembered for. Well, that's our podcast, everyone. This was brought to you by Pastel Today, the free weekly newsletter from Streamline Publishing. Check it out at pasteltoday.com. And you can also find show notes from today's episode, as well as other episodes, on the pastelpodcast.com. So until next time, stay vibrant.